Today's study from the from the Book of Concord, specifically the Augsburg Confession, is Article 26, and that is on concerning. I want to get the language concerning the distinction among foods, and they kind of that title I think is a little misleading because the topic they talk about is a lot bigger than that. Okay. What this talks about is traditions and festivals in the church. We kind of touched on this earlier, but this is what we're starting to see, and what's going to be a very consistent thread is the reformers is our forefathers in the faith, this faith that we still confess, that we still hold to, recognized value in things, but pushed back on their necessity for salvation. And this is another where they say there are a couple of problems with these traditions, these food distinctions, these festivals. In the first place, they first list out their complaints with this. The grace of Christ and teaching concerning faith are obscured. You know, people see the church doing all these traditions, doing these rituals, and they think it's more about that than it is about grace and faith. And they're like, we need to make sure that the priority here is on grace, is on faith. In the second place, such traditions have also obscured God's command, in that the tradition of the church becomes more important somehow than God's command. And I'm reminded of the story in Scripture where Christ is complaining that the Pharisees, they tithe their dill and their mint, so they're even their smallest things, their spices and whatever, but they're neglecting to serve their neighbor. And another example would be when he condemns them for saying, you say it's okay for someone to not support their aging parents as long as the money that they would use to support their aging parents is going to the temple. Okay, so those are some biblical examples, but there are these examples where, and maybe this, I'm going to throw this example out there. Let me know what you think about it, actually, down below. But maybe you see someone in need. Maybe a family member is in need, or you have a friend who just lost someone, and they really need your support. But you say, no, I have to go to church. Now, I am all for, us setting apart Sunday morning worship and saying this is radically important. But if you're so set on that tradition, on that celebration, that you neglect the support you have to give to your family member or your friend, you're getting things a little out of order. So that's the complaint here. And then in the third place, such traditions turn out to be a heavy burden on conscience. He's saying people started to think they have to do this, and this, and they're starting to fall into despair of, I can't do all of this. I can't accomplish it. It would be like if I were to say, you have to watch the daily devotions, read any written devotions that come out, you have to listen to the podcast, you have to show up for Bible class on Mondays, you have to be in a small group, you have to be in worship, and you have to be at every single social event that the church holds, right? That, for a lot of people, especially, if you have a job and a family and your kids are in sports, like that is too much. And you would understandably start to feel burdened. So it's what they're doing is they're saying, we need to keep this in its proper place. But then they go on to say, you can't earn grace, right? You're not earning grace through this. But it says it's taught that all are obliged to conduct themselves in bodily discipline. So he's pulling us again, and this is really consistent throughout the Book of Concord. We're being pulled to a balance point. And that's kind of where it hits our lives today, right? We respect that a lot of these traditions, fasting, Lent is coming up, fasting can be a really helpful tradition, a really helpful spiritual discipline. Traditions in the church, festivals in the church, they can be very helpful. And the Book of Concord is saying they're very helpful, but we have to keep them in their proper place. Okay, so my encouragement to you is connect with these things, and it is good that you connect with the festivals in the church and the traditions of the church, right? I want to see all of you in our Ash Wednesday service on March 2nd. Like, it's a good thing to celebrate, but keep it in it. Never forget that it is by grace you are saved through faith, not of your own works. Because that's the balance we're being drawn to, right? Keep everything in its proper place. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, drop them below. With that, brothers and sisters, go in peace. Serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.